Okay, so we know what circumcision is, right? It's the removal of the foreskin of a man's sexual reproductive organ, specifically the penis. And yeah, I just want to talk about that in accordance with Abraham, how Abraham was circumcised, and that was a mark, a symbol of the covenant, the agreement that Abraham had with God. Now, this symbol, this circumcision, Abraham he had before Isaac was born. So he had it 1 year before Isaac was born. Sarah was not pregnant, and Abraham went through this procedure of circumcision. And it's amazing, like obviously, circumcision is associated with the reproductive organ, and the reproductive organ, sex, reproduction is one of the primary reasons, primary functions of it, right? So after Abraham had been circumcised, and as we said, it was a symbol of his covenant with God, of the promise that God had spoken to him. It was then that we see Isaac finally coming into the narrative, into the picture. Isaac was his timing for his birth then came into fruition. So Abraham, before he was circumcised, he was already accounted as righteous, right? God already had the chat, so to speak, had a conversation with him, where they both talked about him being a father of many nations. And that was 13 years before he had been circumcised. 13 years prior to him being circumcised was when they both had that conversation and that covenant also. God made a covenant where Abraham, cut the animals in two and God passed through it. So yeah, that was 13 years before his circumcision. So he was already considered righteous. 13 years coming through, he was already a righteous man. God accounted righteousness to him for having believed him. So after those 13 years, then God said, okay, they had still not had a son, but throughout that time, Abraham believed. But of course, we know also what happened. Ishmael came into the picture of a slight momentary lapse of judgment by both of them, Sarah and Abraham. And so Ishmael was born. But even though Abraham still believed that God God will bring about his promise. And I just think what I really want to just highlight here is really just how the poeticness of it all, yeah, the poeticness of the miracle. Circumcision is something that is done to, as we said, the reproductive organ, the penis, and after that physical act done to to the reproductive organ, and then Isaac was born. But before that, we know Sarah was not even pregnant, and we know that both of them were way past the ages of bearing any children. Abraham was 100, Sarah was 90 years old, I believe. And so, in all likelihood, after Abraham had had been circumcised, I think it's safe to assume that they probably got together as husband and wife, and they might have had coitus. But even then, it's not them having coitus that brought about Isaac, but it's interesting that, they probably did have it with Abraham with his new features, so we might say, and the poeticness of it all, the um, timing, all the acts that were involved in bringing about this particular miracle, all were associated with the type of miracle it was, which was a birth. and according to the promise that was spoken, which was a promise of a seed by which Abraham would be a father of many nations. So I think that's just really interesting.